came in the building, which was built in 1916. Now, here is a picture of the building which was built in 1892. And then this present building is built around, and there's a picture here where you can see the debris where they haven't particularly finished the yard yet. But before that, the first log schoolhouse was built in 1821, was built up where Sid Meggers, up on North Center Street. You say you have Todd here, that would be his grandparent. That would be, well, right on that property was the first schoolhouse, and it was log, but it burnt several years. Then there were several small schoolhouses. And then they built this academy in 1821 down where the Standard Oil bulk plant is now. And they went to school there until 1850. No, the academy was built in 1851 because the first log school was 1821. And then this academy was purchased by the Board of Education. Evidently, before people, they just went haphazardly to school. And the Board of Education purchased this building in 1892, but then they built this, the original building, which there is a picture which you can come up and see right there. And then in 1916, the new part was built. In 1938, there was another addition built. And I can't tell you when the last edition was built, 1968, somewhere in there, the very last edition. And in 1914, the town organized the Board of Public Affairs, and we had the first electric lights. In the very first building, there was gas lights, and they had electric lights. But even in 1922, which was the first year I came to school, we had outside toilets. And we always hesitated to go to the bathroom during recess because the boys would knock on the doors and everything. They're not any different than they were today. But I don't remember what year we got inside plumbing. It was before Seville had the sewer system or anything else like that. As I say, when the new building went in, then they had electric lights. Of course, I think the problem then was they didn't have night activities. There just wasn't. And in my day, we always went to the town hall for graduation or our end of the year operettas, or any big school doing was always at the town hall. Was always at the town hall. In 1938, when they enlarged this building, then they had their first cafeteria. You always had to bring your lunch before. And in the wintertime, in the old, why we had a home economics room, and if you would bring soup or something in a jar, they'd put it in a boiler and heat it for you. Then you'd have it in your room and you'd have something warm to eat. We never missed school in the wintertime for snow because we came by bobsled. Harold Coppice used to drive the bobsled. And then when there wasn't snow, we came, well, maybe this was a slang expression, but we called it a kid hack. It was a horse-drawn vehicle, and we came by horses, I would say, until maybe I was in the 6th or 7th grade. And I can remember out on the corner where Marion Gordon and the Kazmareks live out in there. Our kid hack went in the ditch one morning. The horses broke the tongue or something or other, and they hauled us all to the doctor, but none of us were hurt. So that was, and we got to go home that day because but the only time we didn't have school, we had floods in the spring. And the commercial room, which later they converted to a furnace room or something, I believe. This building is so changed around, I don't know it. That would have water up to where the typewriters came. And we couldn't have school because the toilets were all, and that's the only time we didn't have school was the spring of the year when we had floods. Now, I understand that this class is to do some rubbings of different people. Now, I have some names here of some different people who might be, I think maybe you could contact Jet. Crawfords. There was Don Crawfords. There was the Osmers. He settled the town, and there was a line of Osmers, and Ruth Rhodes is one of the descendants yet. Paul Blake's mother was an Osmer that could be contacted. The Murray family, there would be Melvin and Hester Jones, Mr. Armstrong, J. Easton. Roger Easton could, that farm north of Seville has been in and the McCoys. Calvin taught school here a good many years, and a McCoy, I don't know what relation, was one of the first principals, a McCoy. The Weldys, which would have been Pat's mother's family, Fred and B.G. Foster. B.G. Foster lived to be 100 years old, and he was active in school boards and so forth and so on. And he lived down there where they have that lawnmower, where Mrs. Netherton used to live. The Chamberses. Now, we couldn't think of the old Chambers's father's name, but there was, you could probably contact John Chambers or Mrs. Roy. The Halberts, William, Ralph, or Carl, any of them. Merck Fraser. Now, that is some far-off relation of Cleela Moore's. She could probably tell you some of that. What do you want to know? Oh, she's your grandmother. Oh, well, you can ask her about that. It was his house. He lived up our way, and they had the fairgrounds there, did they not? Back of there, they had the fairgrounds. Then there was Ab Bell, which lives right side of, the beauty shop up here where Crabtree lives now, right side of the park on Liberty Street. William Brumbaugh, he was, and Bert Boyer and Lees. Now, those are some names. I think I've given you enough names that you can look. Now, have you boys and girls got any questions? I've talked to you mostly about the school. You didn't want me blowing my nose. Well, I had to. Now, do you boys and girls have some questions? Well, you surely do. Do you want them just to ask at random, stand up and ask?
Raise their hand.
All right.
Okay, did the first school that was here come from first kindergarten to sixth grade?
Oh, no, they didn't have kindergarten when they started school here. For a number of years, they didn't have kindergarten during the years that I went to school, although one of the old records say that they sent children to school at 4 years old, and one of the teachers asked for another cradle to be sent in. But they didn't have kindergarten in this school. They had it over at the Baptist Church for a number of years here after my time, after 1934. They didn't have kindergarten until in the 50s, did they? But they went from 1 to 12. Okay, you.
When they like built the log schools, did they like build to make the logs, logs that actually fit together with another log? So what did they use instead of cement to make them fit together?
Well, that I don't know. I'm not quite that old. See, that went back to 1820s. But I suppose they used mud, and they probably had some cement.
They used mud, clay, and grass.
Okay.
Do you know when the giant was born?
Well, now I don't know when he was born, but he died in 1919, and I don't remember how old he was. Do you?
No.
I can't. Here's a picture of the giant. Now you'll be able to come up here and look at some of these pictures. All right. Now who else had their hand up? All right.
Was the giant taller, or was it mother or the giant mother, but bigger than the giant?
You mean the giant's wife? Yes. Captain Bates was 7 foot 8 inches tall, and he weighed 470 pounds. And Mrs. Bates was 7 feet 11 inches tall and weighed 413 pounds. Now she died in 1899. Now he died in 1919. And your great-grandfather buried Captain Bates. We have a letter telling who the pallbearers. Pat's grandfather was a pallbearer. Pat was 14 years old when Captain Bates died, and he lived across the street in Charlie Bell's property. He moved from the country. Pat did not know the first Mrs. Bates because she died in 1899. But Pat would go to town practically every morning and buy a plug of Star tobacco for how much? A penny? A penny?
No.
10 cents?
10 cents.
10 cents.
He wanted the big ones.
Oh. Now, who else?
Did Captain Bates have
Can you speak up, honey, so sound will carry?
Did Captain Bates have a baby?
Yes, they had 2 babies. One was born in England and one was born here, but they did not live. Now there is a wax replica in the Cleveland Museum of Art of the second baby, and the second baby is buried up here with Captain Bates.
When were Mr. and Mrs. Bates?
Were what?
Mr. and Mrs. Bates
Born. I can't tell you that. I didn't look that up. I don't know the dates of that. I could tell you at a later date. I'll send that information down to Mrs. Tram and she'll know.
How old was the baby when it died?
Oh, it was just a few hours old.
How much did the giant Seville weigh when he was born?
The baby, 23 pounds, wasn't it?
One of them was.
One of them was 23 pounds.
Either my great-great-grandpa or my great-grandpa used to go over to Captain Bates' house and sit on his lap all the time.
Who was your great-grandpa?
Edwin Moore.
Who? Moore?
Yeah, Edwin.
Edwin Moore. Oh, that don't ring a bell with me.
And Mrs. Moore, my grandmother, she used to live down the road from Captain Bates.
Yes.
And Elmo Fraser, the one that
Yeah, yeah.
he's my uncle, and I've got, well, I think it's his great grandpa or somebody like that in his family that was buried up in Moundsville Cemetery.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Kurt Cook that used to work
saw me in the barber shop where he is now used to cut Captain Bates's hair.
Yes. Yes. People here in town didn't think any different of him than an ordinary person. They just accepted him as an ordinary person. Do you want to know any more about your school or anything else?
My grandma was a school teacher when I was walk cabins
Where at?
in West Virginia.
Oh, in West Virginia.
What size of shoe did Kathryn Bates wear?
Mrs. Robert Briggs has one of Captain Bates's shoes. Or maybe she has a pair. Yeah, but I can't tell. And I don't know just what size of shoe he wore. But Mrs. Harry, that's Janice's mother, no, her brother's wife's father, Fanchon Schaefer's father, was Captain Bates's crier that they called in the for show business.
What was Mrs. Bates' maiden name?
Swan, Anna Swan. She was from Canada. She was from Canada.
Where did they get married?
In England.
Do you know how they came about or how they met?
Why, they met in the circus in Barnum Bailey. And they appeared before the Queen of England, and the Queen of England then, they were married, I think in one of the abbeys there, you know. But the Queen of England at that time took a very great liking to both of them. And that's where their first baby child was born, was in England.
How come they decided to come to Seville?
Well, they were touring, and they had to, on tour for the circus, and they had to go from Worcester to Cleveland, and they went by horse and buggy. And it was a very, very hot day, and Seville streets, as you can see in all the pictures, were tree-lined. And it was so nice and cool when they came through here that he said, if I ever retire, I'm going to retire here in Seville. Now that's the story. Now I can't tell you whether that's the gospel.
I think that is, because I think their town is pretty with all of it.
Yes,
Even now, it's
yes,
a lot.
yes.
You know where Captain Bates was born?
No.
Kentucky. Down not too far from where I live.
When we were talking about the Schaefers, we just bought a house off the Schaefers. I don't know what the names were.
Where do you live?
On Eureka Road.
Well, that's probably another Schaefer, you know what I mean. That's a very common name.
Where was Kathryn Bates' wife?
Canada. Canada. You don't want nothing? Okay. Anybody else? When you go get your rubbings, what are you going to do then? Are you going to contact the families or for interviews?
The other grade's going to do that.
Oh, the other
They're
grades.
going to do the rubbings and get them ready. And
Oh. Oh, and then they're going to go on from there. Now,
We know that Armstrong's was in the funeral business. What about some of these others? What did the Crawfords do? Do you remember?
they were horse and hay dealers, were they not? Horse and hay dealers.
And what about Murray's? What did they do?
Well, they were just farmers. They were out on the farm there where Gloria Shepherd is now. You know.
Yeah.
Are the Crawford family related to Baird's?
Yes, Jane was a Crawford. Jane was a Crawford.
Mrs. What was her name? Lived in Chippewa Lake. She was a Crawford.
Bostwick. No, Mrs. Bernice Bostwick was Jane Baird's mother's sister. And she was a Stokes. Jane's mother's name was Stokes. And they lived in the house where Mrs. Matheny that works here now lives, the Madisons, and that was an aunt that raised these Stokes children. Did the Stokeses die or what? But Aunt Edith raised them.
Yeah, some of them are dead, I don't know.
What about the doctors? The first one was there was a Dr. Beach ahead of old Dr. Beach?
Yes,
Wasn't there?
and there was a Dr. Hard that was in this corner house, this white corner house, and she taught school out to Guilford Center, and I lived and was raised at Guilford Center. That's out there where that Guilford Motel is. And I used to run down there when I was only 5 years old, and I'd go to school. But we had one girl that was kind of retarded, so they always put me with her because I wasn't to have any lessons, and she didn't have any lessons. But I always had a good time. And Mrs.
Why didn't you have any lessons?
Because I wasn't in school yet. I had run away from home to go down there to school. And Mrs. Hard always cooked soup or something for us every day. I had my bowl there because I was there. And when I was 6, I insisted my mother make me a checkerboard cake, and the whole school let out and we had a party. Now, youngster, what? For 5. Well,
Mr. Metzger, please come to the office. Mr. Metzger, please come to the office.
just firewood and coal that they burnt in the stoves. We used to have a big round-bellied stove in Guilford's to plow. Well, they had plows, but they plowed with horse and horse implements. Hospitals, yeah, but they were few and far between. They were in the big cities. Seville and Medina and Wadsworth didn't have hospitals.
What about the length of the school year when you were going?
When we were here, we always let out in May. We always let out in May, but we always started right the day after Labor Day. But we didn't have any Easter vacation. We didn't even have Good Friday off because they would used to have 3-hour services, and different classes would go for an hour over to the Baptist church. It was mandatory that we had to go, and then we had to come back to school. But we didn't have any days off for holidays, and never Easter vacation or spring vacation. I suppose that's why we got out earlier. And it depended when the holiday came as how much we had at Christmas time.
How long was your school hours?
Well, we used to come, I think we started at about 8:50, and we would get out about 4 o'clock.
The teachers in the early days, were they from the community or did they come from outside?
A lot of them were from the community. And another thing that we wouldn't dare be in the building unless it was very cold, until it was time for school to take up. And then we had to gather at the outside door, and we had to line up, and we had to march into the school by Washington Post March on a Victrola. We just didn't run haphazard. We had to march in.
There's a lot of difference between then and today, then, isn't there?
And when the principal came around, the county superintendent was Mr. Babcock at that time. Oh, we all shook in our shoes then. I think even the teachers shook in their shoes.
At that time, were husband and wife team allowed to teach, or did they have to be the same?
Yes, Mrs. Riffey taught 5th grade, and Mr. Riffey was principal. He was principal from 1917 or 18 to 8, I believe, somewhere in there. And he ruled with an iron hand. He ruled with an iron hand. He taught American and English history and plain and solid geometry. And boy, if you didn't know your lessons, it was just too bad. But,
That was a better way of teaching as compared to what they do today.
well, I don't know. In some things, these children are a lot smarter than what we were. We didn't know, we just ate what Mother put on the table for us. We didn't know about all of these, we didn't go to the grocery store with them, and we didn't know about all of these things, and we just didn't know as much as the children do today.
Did they have like little souvenir shops and general stores?
In general stores, yes. There was, Jenny Hetherington had a store, and she was where Jim's TV is now.
Yeah.
Where Jim's TV, and then Miriam Beach had a store where that building is torn down right next to the hardware. There was a store in there, and she had, that was Dr. Beach's sister, and she had a store. Somebody asked about doctors. There was a Dr. Alexander here at one time, was there not? And a Dr. Hard and Dr. Platt-Beach. Hard and Platt-Beach practiced at the same time. Now, Dr. Hard was very, very brilliant. They said he was so brilliant when he was in college that he was way above his professors and everything else, and it was boring to him, and he took to drink. When he was sober, he was a very brilliant man, and his wife was a school teacher.
Is he buried here in Seville?
Yes, I think so. I think
Is that Hard? Is that what you said?
H-A-R-D. See,
That's him, right?
H.E. Hard. There's a picture here of him.
Can you hold that up?
Well, there's the school board of 1917.
Let me see if I can zoom in on that a little bit. Yeah.
Now, is anybody, oh, you got a question over there.
What was your principal's name when you were
Mr. Riffey.
What kind of like stores do they have?
Well, stores, there used to be, well, there was a grocery store in the town hall. Mr. John Eshelman had that. And my husband worked there when he was only 9 years old. And then there was, Henry Young had a meat market here. No, Posey Steele's dad had that first, where we used to be, where the flower shop is now. That was a meat market. And then there was 2 or 3, there was usually about 4 grocery stores here in town. Always, and they did. And where the hardware store was Cliff Madison's, and they had dry goods and clothing and boots and shoes. And where Romanata's is, that was a pool room, was it not?
Yeah.
That was a pool room. And then at one time, there was a bank in the drugstore. And the drugstore burned in 1910. No, he's buried down to Nellie, Ohio. That's down around Coshocton. Mrs. Riffey was very great on the arts. She was very great on the arts. And she had a pump organ in her room. And she'd play that and we'd sing. And we always had butterflies or birds and the varieties and different things on the boards. And then sometimes instead of us having recess, she'd teach us different dances like the Irish reel and the Highland fling and all that stuff. That was our exercise instead of us going out.
When like you try it with it?
Well, we had to do it on our own paper. She had it done on the board.
How did you have to be graduate from school?
Well, as long as you finished your course. Now, there are some people that would skip a grade. They'd let them skip a grade. So you didn't, and before they graduated, many of them didn't have to graduate. If they could pass the Boxwell examination, they would get there, and they would only have to complete 10 years, then they would be accepted in college or business school. And many people went on to college and business school and didn't graduate from Seville.
What was the Boxwell examination?
Well, that was a state examination that they had to pass. Now, that's how Pat's mother graduated, was by Boxwell examination.
You went to the county seat?
No, they came right here. We had to have tests at the end of the year, and we had to pass them or else. A great highlight at the end of the year was these operettas. Oh, they put I don't know how much work and scenery and everything else, and we'd go to the town hall, and that would just be packed with parents and so forth. And we even went to the town hall when I graduated, and Mrs. Harry Long was my first grade teacher.
Who put on the operettas? Who was in charge of it? The teachers?
The teachers were in charge of the operetta, and sometimes the county music department would help.
Did parents ever get involved in those kind of things, where they would work with them and take part in the office?
Not that I know of. Not that I know of.
Did you have parent-teacher?
Oh, no, that didn't come till after 1935.
The parents helped with the costumes, didn't they?
Well, probably to make for their own child or so forth or so on.
Yeah.
Where's Kathryn made school and how's your house been?
Oh, I can't tell you. I imagine a house. That was not the days of that, Todd.
My grandpa took movies at lunch.
Oh, he did. Now, I have a picture of the flood here.
What was the first park in Seville?
The first park in Seville? Well, I imagine that's where the library stands, because there was a bandstand there, and they had different members. I have a picture of that at home of the band would come every Saturday night, and they'd have a band concert, and people would come in. Well, then it was torn down, and then they had these outdoor movies, and that park looked like awful. Well, then we had Stanhope Park, which is on the Y, but there was never anything particularly there. There, you know, it was just more or less a park. And then we had the one down here. But we didn't have any recreation parks with swings or anything like that.
Did they allow police?
Police? No, I don't think it was necessary for police. In one of the books it tells about the robbing of one of the banks, the bank that was located in the town hall. Spitzer's had a bank in the town hall. And they worked all night, and they had tied up their, a Mary Hikus had noticed them, so they went and tied her up, and they tied up Mr. Weaver. Was Clyde Weaver's father. And they tied him up and kept on working till they...
What used to be the open pantry?
What used to be what?
The open pantry.
Well, that's where the town hall stood. The town hall was built in 1872, and I don't remember. I can remember when it burned, but I can't tell you the date of it. Zeta, do you know the date of...
1940,
Oh, it was more than 40.
56?
56.
I remember going watching it when I was a little girl, going and watching it burn.
Yeah,
It was a
then
big
it said,
thing.
yeah, that was the year Judy graduated, first year she was in college. That's why.
So Spitzer that had the banking company here, is he the same Spitzer started the savings bank in the...
I think that's a continuation of When were the railroad tracks? Well, now the interurban, or the streetcar, was put through here in, now I wrote that down because I thought some of you, 1903, and then it was discontinued in 1930. But the railroad was brought in before that.
When was that jailhouse built down by the railroad track?
Gosh, I don't know when that was built.
That's been here a lot of years.
A long, long time. They used to put hobos in there. It never held criminals. It was some place for them to stay overnight. When a transient would go through.
When you were in school, did you guys have chalkboards?
Oh yes, we had chalkboards, and it was great when the teacher would ask you to clean the chalkboard. Oh, that was quite a mark of distinction.
We always walked back on that streetcar line.
You always walk on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. You.
Did you ever have fire drills or tornadoes?
Oh yes, we had fire drills. We didn't have tornado drills, but we had fire drills, and we never knew when they were going to come. And if we did anything out of line, why, we were sent to detention.
Was the mail traveled by the train or by the horse or how?
Well, now mail came in on a train, because they even had passenger trains, but it was taken around by horse and buggy, because now I also brought here a picture postcard of the post office when it was in this same building where I told you where Miriam Beach had a variety store. The post office was there, and Fred Foster and Jay Munn delivered mail then, did they not, Pat? Mm-hmm. There was 3 wagons, and Mr. Lowry was the postmaster, was he not? Mm-hmm. And he lived up where Mrs. Wrights lived there now, but Mrs. Kindig lived there. And then he moved across the street into where Ron Huffman's live. And their son was the instigator. And this came from Seville. And I keep telling people this, and I don't know whether they believe me or not, but he was the instigator of UNICEF. He worked with the Red Cross, and he has a book, The Hungry of the World or something or other, Donald Lowry, and it's in our library over here. And he was the one that started UNICEF, because he traveled over the world. He is dead now. He is dead. He only has one sister living. His other sister was the physical education director in Worcester College, and then there is one sister still over at Lebanon, or I'd have that address at home, but I just don't know now. And oh no, New York City. He left, and I don't think he came back the year that we entertained the Russians. The church dignitary of the Russians came here to Seville and was at different houses, and Donald Lowry was in that. But he died, he was a graduate of Seville. Somebody raised their hand over there. Okay.
Did you ever have a fire when you were in school?
No, I don't know of a fire here in school.
Didn't one of the presidents go to Vietnam?
Yes, William Howard Taft. This was one of the stops and on the railroad, and he made a speech here. This was a whistle stop.
Did they have any sports and stuff?
Oh yes, baseball was the main sport. We didn't have football, but baseball, and they would walk they wouldn't be hauled from one town to the other. They'd walk. My husband's walked to Sharon Center to play ball a good many times.
How far is that?
Seville Vineyards now.
What?
The Seville,
Yes.
that was the hotel
It's a
where
good 20.
William after that.
Yeah, stayed.
Yeah.
Stayed.
He stayed in
We'd usually get a ride to some farm.
a dollar bill that he had left hanging up on the wall
Mm-hmm.
and showed
Uh-huh.
what the speech was, he said, and what room he stayed in,
Mm-hmm.
and it showed you the room.
That's in the inn now, Eric?
Yeah.
Well, I never knew that. I've been there a good many times.
You learned something today, too.
I didn't,
Do you know if there was a tornado in Seville?
if there was what?
Ever a tornado in Seville?
Not that I know of. No tornado. I'll tell you another thing. The day, maybe when gasoline goes up to $1, we'll learn to walk more. But at the end of the school year, our teachers would take us for our picnic. And we would walk from here out to Ralph Coleman's woods. And we'd have a wiener and marshmallow roast. And that would be our picnic, and we would have games and play. And then sometimes our parents would pick us up, but most of the time we'd walk home.
How far is that out there, Katie?
Well, I'd say a mile and a half. But we walked,
We're out to Skinner.
yeah, for our picnic.
What were the sizes of your classes at that point, Katie?
Well, I should have brought my first grade picture. I would say there was 20 or 25 in my first grade.
Did you have mixed grades? Like
Oh,
or-
Oh, no. We had just just first grade and second grade.
Did you have bikes to ride back there?
Oh, bikes, no. That's why I can't ride a bike today. I didn't have any, and I've tried to learn since, but I guess I've got too old.
Did you ever go on field trips?
Field trips, oh no, The only field trip we ever had was out to, we didn't have any means of conveyance. You know, we'd have had to walk.
Did you ever have buses here?
Yes, I would say buses came in about 19, I started in 22, and I'd say 26 or 27 buses came in.
What if some people live pretty far out and would they or have to walk to school?
Well, no, they came by Kid Hacker. These buses or sleds or so forth and so on. This was a great thing they talked about. It was as great of an issue when the school was, they called it centralized, from the outlying. See, there was a school out to Guilford Center, there was a school down Lee Road, and there was a school up north, up around Dykes, up around in there, or Edith Tischer's. There was little schoolhouses all over. Well, then they brought them all here into Seville, and the old schoolhouses were disbanded, or so forth and so on. And that was as big of an issue when they called this centralization of schools as when Cloverleaf got consolidated.
When was Guilford National Bank built?
Built here? I'd have to look that up. I don't know all the, I'd have to look that up to find, okay.
When were cars built?
When were cars built? Well, the cars were built way back, but they weren't here. Now we have a 1906 to a 1907 Craig Toledo Roadster with Captain Bates in it, and this man from Akron owned it. And I finally, J. Munn had a automobile to deliver mail, did he not?
Mm-hmm.
But, and then here, there's some pictures here too of when we had fairs right here in the center of town, right here in the square. And then there was another fairground up back of where Starkey's have their building and so forth and so on.
Did you use bricks for roads?
Well, now what year was this brick road put in here?
About 19.
15,
I remember watching them.
1915, right around there.
Yeah, somewhere.
Right around 15, this East Main Street road.
Do you spend a lot of your time walking rather than riding? Not like on the bus, but rather than walking rather than riding?
We had to come, whatever conveyance was provided for us. We didn't dare walk. We had to come in that conveyance.
Was there any kind of event there?
Well, they called it a fair instead of a carnival.
Do you know the first time the train came through Seville?
No, I can't tell you. I'd have to look that up. I don't keep everything in my head.
They have Jacksonville Day.
They have what?
Jacksonville.
I can't hear you.
Track and field day, that's when we have
Oh, they didn't have tractors. I can remember.
track and field day.
Oh, track and field day. Yes, we used to have track meets. We used to have track meets. But that was when I got into high school. I would say 1926, 28, somewhere in there.
When you first had the cafeteria, how much was your lunch?
Oh, they didn't have the cafeteria during the years I was here. It wasn't started until in 1938. That was when they had the first cafeteria.
You said the teacher made soup for you, she just gave.
Oh, she just gave that to us because
Teacher furnished lunch.
when they had these outlying schools, there was no board of education that ruled those schools. The people that sent the students, they paid, and they more or less governed the schools and hired the teacher. I don't know whether I've answered any questions. All right.
How much did you have to pay for your lunch when you had the first cafeteria?
I don't know because I wasn't in school when they had. I was grown up by the time they had cafeteria.
Did they have speakers for the document, or did they have to go off to the
Did they have what?
speakers to announce like
Oh no, we didn't have radio. We didn't. Radio didn't come in until in the early 30s, and then I was practically out of school.
Did you have any big shopping centers or malls?
Oh no, there was no big shopping centers or malls. We bought everything at home, and everything was provided practically on your own farm or anything like that. Rock and roll, I suppose you could call it rock and roll, but we didn't call it rock and roll. I suppose the closest thing to rock and roll was Al Jolson at that time, and that's way, way back.
Katie, one question, considering the mode of transportation and everything, how often would somebody from Seville get a chance to go into a large city like Cleveland or Akron? That would be kind of a major trip.
Yes, that would be a major trip. Now, Pat was raised by grandparents because his mother died when he was just very small, and he worked for the Eshelmans. So when it came time to buy school clothes in the fall, Grandma had 2 other small children at home, so Mrs. Eshelman would take Pat, and they would go on the interurban to Cleveland and buy his school clothes.
How often when you get to a town like Medina, which is about 8 miles up the pike?
Well,
Not very often.
That's what I kind of thought, that most of your
Well,
activity would be surrounded.
now, a lot of them went down to Sterling. There was a big department store, Steiner and Maybaugh, and that was clothing and everything else. Well, that burned down, and then Mayball built himself. And I can remember the stores always had these big porches, you know, and you'd walk on these porches. And I can remember going to the fair down to Worcester on the interurban. And then maybe we would go into the stores before we would go to fair. But you walked from where the interurban left you off to go to the fairgrounds and to go to the stores. But a once a year trip, that was it.
Could I interrupt once more? I'm running out on this tape. I've got about 5 or 10 minutes left. Could we tape the picture and have you explain the picture so I can get that on tape also?
All right.
If
Now,
you can hold them up and maybe just talk about them.
all right.
Zoom in on them and get a good shot if you can, or maybe you can come in
All
closer
right.
to the camera.
I don't know. Can you see these?
I can get a faint idea.
All right. Now, this is the first school.
If I
Didn't
move the camera over.
Didn't you have this, the first school here? I mean, this first building.
Yeah, that's the one
That-
they gave us.
Yeah, that's one. Well, then here is the construction of the school in 1916.
And who, is that the school board on the other page there?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Now, did you have the academy?
No.
That was down where the,
Where is that building at now? That been destroyed?
that's destroyed. That's destroyed. All right. Now, this is the chain works, and that's where they have that sale now in right there where the laundromat is and so forth and so on. Now here is the first telephone exchange that was in Mac Kindig's house. And Mabel Frazier and Gertie Ress were the girls that worked at the, and Mabel Frazier was Richard Frazier's mother. She died not too many years ago. Now here's a picture of the interurban. Now that was taken right behind the sweet shop, and it got off of the tracks.
Not so unusual. What we
Now here's the flood in 1913. You can see they dredged the creek, and now we don't have floods anymore. But we used to have a flood every spring. Now here was the post office, the earliest post office. All right. Now here's a picture of Captain and Mrs. Bates, the first Mrs. Bates. I evidently am missing the second Mrs. Bates, Pat. Then there are some pictures here of the street fair, or the fair that they used to have. Then here are some streets in Seville. I don't know whether you can get them or not. And a tobacco field. Now, we didn't say anything about a tobacco field. Tobacco was the main crop here until 1920. And it depleted the soil so much that they had to quit raising tobacco. But every farmer, and then after they disbanded the school or the academy, that was a cigar factory. And Pat's great uncle was the head man there.
Could you hold those pictures up and Is that a field of tobacco there?
Yes, that's a field of tobacco.
Did they have allotments, you know, the amount of tobacco each one could raise, or could you raise whatever you wanted?
You raised whatever you wanted.
Yeah, because when
Whatever.
we raised back in Kentucky, we had allotments. In other words, we were allowed to raise whatever our tobacco acreage was, and for us it was 4.5 acres. We couldn't raise anything more than that.
Yeah, now they were not limited here. Now that is Captain Bates in a old Toledo Roadster, Craig Toledo Roadster. And then there are some more pictures here if the children would like to come up and
Did
see
we get
them.
all of them on the tape?
Now, not all, because I didn't show you all of the fair. You know, I just gave you the one. There's several. And then here is Captain Bates in uniform.
Could you hold up the blue and gold
That's the first annual of
Seville High School?
Seville High School, and
When was that put out,
1917. And the only one here now Sam Masai's picture is in this.
Could I get a picture, Sam? Because I'm going to get him down too.
Well, now which one is he here, Pat? Pick him out. I don't know him.
Right there.
Right here. See, there is the,
Will he want this over there?
I don't know. You hold it. You hold it.
Let me get the focus on it.
Now, there's a picture of L.D. Kettner in there, too. Now, he's our neighbor, and he's living, but he doesn't talk very well. There's lots of material in that. We've got a lot more at home that could be drugged down here, but I just brought what I thought you would like to see.
What did you use for floors? Did you use wood or carpet or what? Wood floors, and then they would oil them to keep the dust down. Yes, gasoline would sell for about 15 cents a gallon. Have we taken up all the time? How much would it cost to tank full of gas for one of those cars?
Well, I tell you, when I was a young girl, we used to put $1 worth of gasoline in the car, and we could go to work all week and go somewhere on Sunday, and that dollar would take us all this time. And we'd pay $6 for a tire and $6 for a battery.
What kind of mower did you have back then?
Mower, you had to push them. You had to push. There wasn't such a thing as a power mower. You had to push. And
Remember that?
Yeah.
My granddad's got a lot of push mowers.
oh, he has. Well, there's some people still use them. They still use them.
My granddad used to have some pool places.
He had what?
Pool place.
A pool place. Yeah, Bob Armstrong had
Yeah.
Weaver's, where Jim Detweiler is. Clyde Weaver had that, and then Bob Armstrong. That would be your grandpa. Your grandpa.
Do we have any more questions? Well, I want to take the opportunity to thank both of you. And,
Well, I don't think we did much of anything.
Pat, you know, we really appreciate both of you coming in. And I'd like to pass on a compliment to the children. Pat told me he was really amazed how interested you all are in the history of Seville. He's very pleased to see that. So I'd like to give Mr. and Mrs. Dempsey a hand, you know.
We're glad to come down and talk to you. And if someone just has to know some of these things, I do have material I could look up.
But we'd like to come into the house too, you know, and do some taping up there.
Okay.
But the sixth grade will be doing the interviewing with that, and then we'll be up there, and we will be starting that within the next week or so.
Okay.
Because I'd like to get a record of as much as I can, and when I run out of tapes, I'll see if I can find somebody from PK and buy some more.
Well, we have a wealth of material up there. Some of this, now this is the only thing that belongs to the school. That is in the Alumni Society. That belongs to the
Do they have
school.
a lot of things in the alumni society
Yes.
that we can get in and tape and all get a record?
So much of that stuff was newspaper, and it's about passé. It's about passé.